Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the May garden checklist video. I do one of these each month, just going over the things that I'm doing in my landscape here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B. That includes, I include in these videos pruning, planting, vegetable gardening, anything that you might be doing in your garden. So May happens to be the month of yes, you can. And let's go over some of those things. Can I put my annuals in the ground right now? Yes, you can. As long as you're past your average last frost date and you're looking at your forecast. Here in my area, we're well past my average last frost date, which is around April 15th. I've looked way out in the forecast, and so I'm putting my annuals in the ground. I like to buy them as 4 or 6 packs. Which if the earlier you shop in the season, the more likely you are to find them. There's a lot more value in this. Or I've started them from seed. And if you're following along with the channel, you can see the varieties that are easier to do from seed and ones that I'm purchasing. Those videos are in the process of going up, being shot. These things are going in the ground now, and you'll see those over the next couple of weeks. I also like to do my own hanging baskets. And again, I can buy something in a 4-pack or a 6-pack to make my own hanging baskets. I find that, if you buy a hanging basket, sometimes they're already super, full and they're beautiful, and I understand why people purchase them that way, but you're going to be watering them a lot during the summer. So starting them yourself sometimes can make them last longer, and they're more rewarding because you get to watch them grow. Although in the Southeast, fall is probably a better time to plant if you're planting lots and lots of things. May is certainly a good time to be putting shrubs and trees in the ground. Just know that if you're planting in May here in the South, you may have to do a little more watering on them during that first summer in the ground. If they were fall planted, they would have been rooted in the ground a little more and require maybe a little less from you during this first summer in the ground. I plant year round, but I'm just throwing that out. Shrubs, yes. Especially something like this Loropetalum, which can be slightly marginal in my area in the wintertime. This is one of the things I'm going to definitely spring plant because I can get a full season's growth on it before it has its first winter. So marginally hardy things kind of break that fall is for planting rule. And grasses as well. If you're going to be adding grasses to your landscape, definitely spring planting them. May is a great month. Trees, definitely, and you're going to have a great selection of trees. This Japanese maple is going to be going in the ground, and it's actually a Chinese maple is going to be going in the ground soon. So look for that video right there coming up. Ground covers are a great idea for planting during any month, really, but thinking about putting them in here in May, letting them spread out during the summertime, it will reduce weed pressure in your garden and reduce the amount of mulch you're having to use. So I have a lot of ground cover plants going in, ground cover perennials. I also have a lot of shade plants going in. Lots and lots of ferns. I've got some native plants like this mayapple that's going to be going in this spring. Another thing I like to think about is, here's a hosta. Here's a great example of a very bright plant for the shade. And sometimes our shade areas are super dark. So thinking about when you're shopping for plants in the spring, thinking about gold foliage plants to brighten up dark spaces. So also tropical bulbs, because it's that time of year. I've got elephant ears that I started early. What are you doing, Holly? You're definitely invading this video. Okay, so here's an elephant ear that I have started in the ground. These come back for me. I actually have 2 in the front garden. Again, spring planting them as early as possible will assure that a little bit more, having them more established. My dahlias, also marginal in this area, do come back year to year. Those are going in the ground now that we've passed our frost date. I've got asparagus going in. I've got strawberries going in. So lots and lots of things can be planted here in May. Pretty much anything. The sky's the limit. A few things to think about in the garden. Number one, this is a giant pollinator garden. That is what I'm going for. It's what I enjoy in my garden. Just planted lots of annuals around this strip. They're not super showy right this second because I did deadhead them. I took the flowers off after they were planted, and I do recommend you do that because that will make them bigger, better, fuller during the summer months. But all of those things along that bed edge are for pollinators. Another thing I like to think about is here are some of my encore azaleas. They're just finishing their spring flowering. They will bloom again later in the season. But a lot of times when people shop this time of year, they'll bring back things that are just in full flower and not think about all the seasons of the year. As these are fading, I have a viburnum behind it that's about to start flowering. I've got some summer flowering hydrangeas over there, butterfly bush that will bloom later. There are lots of perennials that'll come up that'll bloom during the summer. I've got alliums that are about to open up. Hydrangea is going to open up later than the azaleas do. Gardenia back here that's going to bloom later in the summer. A couple of loropetalum that have already bloomed. So this is, when I'm thinking through this, I'm thinking I want spring flowers, summer flowers, fall flowers, and here in the South we can even have winter flowering things. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. The other thing I have going on in the next few weeks is a container refresh. I've got lots of containers in this landscape. It'll be time to take out my winter violas that are in here and put some summer things in here. At the same time, I'm probably just going to go ahead and pull my shrubs out of the containers, knock a little bit of the old soil off, put some fresh soil on them, and just refresh them for the season. And this is a little topiary that I created last year. I'll go ahead and kind of reshape that at the same time. Can you put your summer vegetables in yet? Yes, you can. I've got my cool season vegetables out here looking fantastic. Picking from these pretty much almost daily for salads. In order to extend the season a bit, because these things will, as it heats up out here, they'll try to bolt, they'll try to flower, and they'll be finished for the season. I've actually planted peppers and squash and other things in here to shade them a bit as the season goes on, hoping to extend that. This is another area I like to save money on. My tomatoes and peppers, I start from seed, and you still have plenty of time if you want to do them from seed in the house. And everything else, the squash, cucumbers, okra, and other things are just direct seeded directly into the garden, and that was done yesterday. And so, again, I'm always looking for ways to maximize the amount of food that I can produce in this area and save money on it at the same time, so you don't end up with $5 tomatoes and that kind of thing. But all of these, again, follow along with the channel, and you can learn how to start the seeds on your own and collect some of the seeds as well. I showed the strawberries and the asparagus that are going into the ground. Most all of your herbs can be planted this time of year. Some will be annuals, like basil, and basil's super easy to do from seed. Another way that you can save money, and there's like 500 seeds in a packet. You'll have it for a couple of years as long as you protect the seeds. Your perennial herbs can go in this time of year too. Things like oregano, once you plant it, you have it. I do put mint in a container so it can't get run wild in the garden. Things like rosemary, parsley is a biennial. There's lots of herbs that you can add to your landscape, and it companions so well with your vegetable garden, because you can come out and pick a salad and and season it at the same time. One other thing, just throwing this out, this pollinator garden that I'm showing you over here pairs well with my vegetable garden. By inviting all of these pollinators into the garden, all of my vegetables get pollinated. Another question I get frequently this time of year is, can I fertilize? Yes, you can. This is a great time of year to be fertilizing your plants. I fertilize mine much earlier in the season. There's a video for that. But if you have not fertilized your landscape at this point, you can. I use an organic fertilizer. I do not push my plants very hard. The harder you push them, the more you force them to grow, the more likely you are to have insect disease problems, having to water them more, having plants stretch so much that they don't have root systems to even keep up with the amount of growth that they're having on the top of them. Just be careful. Slow and steady wins the race. Another question I get this time of year is, can you prune? Yes, you can, absolutely. And all of the early spring flowering shrubs that have already flowered or about to finish flowering, as they finish, you can absolutely prune them. Know what you have in your landscape. There's some summer flowering things that will bloom later that may already be setting their flower buds. So I definitely would be pruning on that hydrangea that I showed in the back, and gardenias, which are budding up at this point. But if it's as it's finishing flowering during the spring season, you can absolutely prune it. Or if it's something that you don't rely on for flowers, like a boxwood or a holly or something like that, absolutely prune them. Also, coming out of a winter where we had some, we kind of had a strange event there in the middle of March where it was really, really cold. One night after things had started to wake up, this distilleum got quite badly damaged, and it knocked it back about a foot. And so we can absolutely be pruning some of that winter damage out of things and dead limbs, that kind of thing. There's a playlist on the channel with all of these monthly videos, and I think the first year I did very, very thorough videos. In the last couple years, I've tended to do more what I have going on in my garden during the month of May. Can I mulch this time of year? Absolutely. The answer is yes again. Mulching is a good idea. If you haven't, make sure you're getting out weeds first. And so a lot of our winter weeds, henbits and chickweeds and all those things, try to get as much of that stuff out as you can before you mulch. What can you mulch with? Well, one thing I talked about earlier was ground covers. Using ground covers in the landscape to cover the ground, like this sedum that's over here in front of the camera now. A great example of that, of keeping its weed suppression. It's helping me hold moisture in place. It's doing all the things a mulch would do, and I don't have to spend money on it again. I use wood chips here in the paths. I initially used wood chips on this entire landscape, which has improved the soil greatly. I've got pine bark in this annual border that I showed earlier. I've got triple shredded hardwood back here in the bed. You can use whatever you want to use as mulch for, just keep the ground covered with organic material. It's going to help hold moisture in place during the summer. It's going to be weed suppression. One of the things that's not as frequently talked about with mulch in the summertime that's important is a lot of these plants are super shallow rooted. And if you have just bare dirt around them, the sun is able to really almost cook the surface roots on some of your plants. I really see plants struggle mightily in the summertime without that protection. If you have an irrigation system or you're thinking about putting in an irrigation system, this is the time of year to be doing that kind of maintenance, preparing for the summer or installing. I do have some videos on the channel for drip irrigation, and my drip tube is right here. We've been a little dry this year. April is actually our driest month here in central North Carolina. It's our driest month of the year, but we actually went into April a little dry. So I've actually had to do a little bit of watering. We got some rain yesterday afternoon. It was not a big rain. And I suspect that within the next week and a half, I'm probably gonna have to do some watering out here again, which I'm hoping is not a trend for the summertime, but do be keeping an eye on it. Newly planted things, as I'm digging holes right now, it's a little drier than I would like for it to be going into summer. So just be conscious of that. My spring flowering bulbs that I treat as perennials, like my daffodils, those are going to be standing in the garden for several more weeks. A lot of people, don't like that look. You can fold those over if you want to. Some people will put a little rubber band around them, tie a little string around them. Dr. Armitage, and this is in an upcoming video, he actually cuts his daffodils in half, and he says he's done that for years, and they still store enough energy. It leaves enough green on them. I like to interplant my bulbs like that with perennials, so that the perennials come up and cover them as they're fading. Something like a salvia would be coming up in the middle of that and taking over that space, and it draws less attention to that area. One of the tasks that I think gets kind of overlooked in gardening is marking things down. Make sure, make a drawing of the space and write down what you have in the garden, or at least leave little tags in the ground, something to indicate where things are. As an example of that, here's an agapanthus that's coming back from last summer. If I didn't know where this was, I could have easily planted right over the top of it while it was dormant during the winter. Same thing with this hosta back here. These hyacinths are on their way. The flowers have been cut off of them, and they're on their way to going back dormant. By the middle of summer, I'll have no idea they're here unless I have a map somewhere. So keep that in mind. It's super important. When you have a garden that's always changing and always doing something new, you really need to know where things are. I talked about the importance of pollinators in my garden. I also want to talk about the importance of birds. And so inviting birds in, however you're doing that. You can do that with native perennials. You can do that by having a very diverse garden. You know, they'll come in and help. A lot of them that are insect-eating birds will come in and take care of some of your insect problems. But I feed them, have houses. I have a house, you know, a bluebird house, and I want them in the landscape. They're an important part of the ecosystem. Just keep that in mind. Hummingbirds as well. Most of my hummingbirds, I don't need this hummingbird feeder because I have salvias and other things I'm thinking through that are great for the hummingbirds. I get 1,000 questions this time of year about pests in the garden. What can I do? It's got spots. What can I do? It's been eaten. What can I do? Nothing. I'm going to do nothing. This dahlia that's in front of you right now has a few chewed leaves on it, and I'm not going to bother with it. I've got a very diverse landscape, and you know, I have birds to help me, and I have beneficial insects out here to help me. Any spraying that I do on this dahlia with an insecticide is going to not only kill the insect that's causing the damage, but in all likelihood the beneficial as well. It's just going to upset the balance in the landscape. I'm just not going to worry about it. That dahlia is going to be fine. It's growing, it's happy, and it will bloom this summer with or without damaged leaves. May is also the month where we can think about bringing our houseplants out, repotting them, refreshing the soil in them, fertilizing them. Just keep an eye out for the weather though. If we end up with another cold night, which is always possible, they may need to be shifted back into the house pretty quickly. So really, May is the yes you can month, and most everything that you'd want to do in a garden you can do during the month of May. Always I end these videos saying explore. Go out to public gardens, botanic gardens this time of year are just on fire. You can learn a ton. Hopefully they have everything tagged. When I'm just walking around the neighborhood, you know, the plant ID apps are pretty effective at identifying things. So if you see something you're interested in a neighbor's yard, take a quick pic of it, download one of those identification apps, and figure out what it is so you can add it to your garden. Thank you guys for following along with these monthly checklist videos. I'll be back with one in June. Thanks for watching.